Well, good morning, and thank you, Alexis, and thank you everyone for being online, and Sylvia for joining us. I had the pleasure to meet Sylvia, and she was one of our featured speakers at a program we organized in Panama last year. In fact, I'll use this to quickly get the sales pitch out of the way. That was our first annual, the Institute of the Americas' first annual LNG prospects for LNG and natural gas in Central America Forum, and I'm delighted to let everyone online here know that we will be hosting our second annual forum on the prospects for LNG and natural gas in Central America on October 2nd in San Jose, Costa Rica. So please mark your calendars for that. I'm going to be brief because, frankly, the Panama Canal does not need much of an introduction. I think there's not probably a person alive who hasn't at least heard about the Panama Canal. But one thing I noticed this morning, and I wanted to mention because I, as a historian, was fascinated, I have a photograph on my wall here in my office of the SS Ancon transiting the canal. And I looked at the bottom of that photo this morning and I realized that that was on August 15th, 1914. So without any real planning, we have somehow almost ended up exactly 99 years to the day since the SS Ancon first transited the Panama Canal. And I mention that because, like I said, I'm fascinated by it, but it also makes you realize that we're coming up on the 100th anniversary of the Panama Canal, and we're coming up on a major expansion project, and that's exactly why we've invited and are so delighted to have Silvia De Marucci with us this morning to talk about the Panama Canal and its expansion. But more importantly, we look forward to having Sylvia talk with us about what that expansion means for the global energy business and particularly LNG trade. And I think everyone on this line knows that this is part of an IOA Energy webinar series that has focused a couple of times previously on the topic of LNG, and most recently exactly on the topic of sort of the unconventional resource boom in the U.S., the natural gas boom in the U.S., and what it means for LNG exports. And I think this is something we obviously look forward to having Sylvia talk about. And I read recently an article that said the expansion of the Panama Canal may just be in perfect synchronicity with this natural gas boom in the U.S., and that is to say, right at the time when several projects to export natural gas into the global marketplace are coming online, it'll coincide with the opening and expansion of the Panama Canal. So I think to get a clearer picture on that, we're delighted to have Sylvia with us as our featured presenter. And again, Sylvia, thanks so much for preparing this presentation, for taking the time to join us. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you. And thank you so much for joining us. And thanks everyone for being here.
Silvia?
Yes, sorry, I had a little bit of problem. It seemed to go off air, but now I'm back.
Okay,
No
great.
problem.
I'm glad you're back.
Sorry about that.
Not a problem.
Okay, good morning. Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for your participation. Today, I'd like to talk to you about the expansion program of the Panama Canal and its impact specifically on LNG trades. But first, I'd like to say that our office, the liquid bulk segment at the Panama Canal, is in charge of the market analysis for chemicals, petroleum products and oil, LPG and LNG. Today, I prepared an agenda and I will start by providing a brief explanation of the physical profile of the Panama Canal and an overview of the performance and operation. I will also present the drivers that triggered the expansion of the canal. And I would like to include an explanation of the project components. And finally, I will focus on how we foresee the project to impact the LNG trade flows. Probably most of you are already familiar with the Panama Canal, but I will introduce the basic concepts. Oh, it seems that my slide is not moving. Okay, yeah, I will introduce the basic concept of the canal for those of you who are not so familiar with it. It is difficult to understand our operational environment without this piece of information. So I will start by saying that the Panama Canal is a water staircase of approximately 50 miles long that link the Pacific Ocean and the Caribbean Sea. When vessels transit the canal, they actually navigate through our river system. Our lock chambers elevate the ship 26 meters above sea level. Our In this way, the vessel travels through our mountains, and then the locks bring it back at the end of the journey to the sea level on the other side. As you can see, the efficient and safe operation of the canal greatly depends on the availability of fresh water and the continuous maintenance and improvement that we provide to the plant and equipment. Since it was inaugurated in 1915, the canal has changed the geography of trade and by providing a shortcut between different origins and destinations for more than 144 maritime commercial routes. Throughout the years, the canal has witnessed over 1 million transits and over 8.8 billion long tons of cargo. And what are the main commodities that transit the canal? Well, today the main commodity is containerized cargo. It's followed by grains, by petroleum products, ores, metals and minerals, coke and coal, chemicals and petrochemicals, well, almost everything, including nuclear waste from time to time. Containerized cargo became number one trade back in 1995 when it displaced dry bulkers. Since then, container vessels have followed a steep growth trend. What you will not see in this chart and in our history
Sylvia? We lost you there. Apologies, everybody. Just one moment. It looks like Sylvia's having a slight technical problem.
Hello, I'm sorry, I lost my connection again. Are you there?
I'm here. I had my microphone off. Please continue.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Sylvia, yes, we can hear you.
I'm sorry, I lost my connection again.
No, not a problem. Not a problem. Just keep going. Apologies, everybody.
Okay, very sorry about that.
No, no worries.
Okay, I'll move forward. Okay, the trend in shipping has been towards the use of larger ships, and the canal has been an eyewitness to this shift. And what we show in this in the graph is that vessels have been growing, and the canal has witnessed this change. The Panama Canal unit to measure vessels is the Panama Canal Universal Measurement System, which we call PCUMS. And it is a volumetric unit roughly equivalent to 100 cubic feet and represents the cargo carrying capacity of the vessels. As you can see here, this is the vessel size on average that would transit the canal in the first half of the 20th century. What the canal has to cope with today is this vessel size. And as you can see, it is not easy to accommodate a vessel that is almost hitting the wall when transiting. What does this mean to our capacity? It takes us to the driving forces behind the decision to engage in a multi-billion-dollar expansion program. It basically has a lot of stress on our resources, and in this comparison, you can see the resources that we need to transit a small vessel compared to a Panamax vessel. A small vessel would take an hour on the Gatun locks on the Atlantic side. It requires 4 locomotives, is assisted by 3 tugs and 1 pilot, and if there is no hazardous cargo, it would be transiting without any restriction. A Panamax vessel, on the other side, requires double the time at the lock, 6 to 8 locomotives, 7 to 10 tugs, and 2 to 3 pilots. So it is a lot of stress on our resources. And this reduction in capacity due to increased traffic of larger vessels is then worsened by the forecast of future demand. This is the forecast of future demand that we had back in 2006 when we were studying the expansion. And you can see that in the blue line that you see here that looks like a stair represents the 1.6 billion enhancement efforts that we engage on to expand the capacity of the existing canal from 280 million tons, PCUMS tons, to about 330 to 340 million PCUMS tons. After this major improvement that we did, there is nothing else that we could really do to improve the existing capacity.
My apologies. It looks like Sylvia's having some technical problems again. Please wait. I apologize. Hopefully she can come back online. Okay, she's back. My apologies again. Sylvia, you seem to be having some connection problems.
What you can see in this graph on the orange triangle is the demand that we are expecting to have post 2011, 2012. And this is a demand that we would not be able to attend if we did not engage in our $5.25 billion expansion program. So these two factors, larger vessels and long-term demand, are the factors that trigger the construction of the third set of locks for post-Panamax vessels. So now let me go into the expansion program components. In 2006, the expansion of the Panama Canal was approved in a national referendum by a large majority, and the works began in 2007. The main components of this expansion program are the deepening and widening of the Atlantic and Pacific entrances, as you can see in the map. Then we have the building of post-Panamax locks, both on the Atlantic and on the Pacific. In addition, we needed to build an access channel to the new locks to the Pacific side. We needed to deepen and widen the Gatun Lake, which provides all the fresh water, and the Gaylord Cut navigational channels. This is the narrowest part of the canal. And finally, we needed to increase the Gatun Lake maximum operational level. And this is basically to provide enough draft for those post-Panamax vessels that we expect to receive. And this, in a nutshell, is what the expansion program is all about. Let me take you through the evolution of the project with some pictures that I have gathered together here. This expansion program is not new. Back in 1939, the American government began an effort to expand the canal, but these efforts were stalled because of Second World War. So we are using the excavations from 1939 into our project. So here you can see the construction site back in 2009 on the Pacific side. This is a view from 2010, so you can see how it has been evolving. This is 2011, 2012, and this is early on in 2013. The same was, we had the same situation on the Atlantic side. So I will also show you on the bottom of the slide, you can see the lake. And this is a view of the excavations from 1939 on the Atlantic side. And this is a view from 2009. Oops. This is 2010, 2011, the view from 2012, and this is also early on in 2013. So if you wish to visit us, we will probably take you to the little casita that you see on the right-hand side on top of that hill. The Canal expansion program was designed with the following objectives in mind: to maintain canal competitiveness as well as the value of the route, to increase capacity and allow the transit of larger vessels, to sustain tonnage and profitability growth, to improve safety and efficiency in operation,
Okay, looks like she's just dropped out again. I apologize. She'll be back shortly. Just one moment. Ah, here she is. No problem. Keep going.
I'm sorry, but I keep losing my connection. But anyway, I will continue with the feature that these new logs will have. And in order to fulfill this last objective of maximizing our freshwater utilization, the new logs have this new feature of water-saving basins. What it basically does is that it saves 60% of the water required for a transit. And when the vessel transits the logs, this 60% of the water is returned to the log chamber for another transit to use this water. The benefit of this is that this new log, even though it's much larger than the existing one, is using 7% less water than the existing canal. So let's take a look at the effects of the expansion on the LNG trade. The existing canal allows the transit of what we know as a Panamax vessel, which is a vessel about 294 meters long by 32 meters wide and with a maximum draft of 12 meters. The new locks will allow vessels that are 366 meters long by 49 meters wide and 15 meters of draft. This is perfect for a 13,000 to 14,000 TEU container vessel and also for an LNG of about 180,000 cubic meters. But what does this really mean to you? Well, today, figures show that the The LNG fleet today, only 8.6% of it can transit the existing locks, and about 25.9% of the order book would be able to transit the existing locks. These vessels are too small to take on a long-haul voyage. But by 2015, these pictures should completely change. And about 88% of the existing world's fleet will fit the new locks, and 100% of the order book is eligible to transit. For the canal, the shale revolution in the United States is the main driver of the expected transits of LNG carriers in the future. I must confess that back in 2006, when we completed the market studies for the liquid bulk segment, there was no LNG included in our forecasts because the volumes were negligible. At the same time, the US stood as a major gas importer, and the only flows that we could foresee at the time were coming from Peru to Europe and the US Gulf. Since then, a lot has changed, and the horizontal drilling and fracking technology have made it possible to access shale gas, and the impact has been so big that it seems to me like it's Titusville all over again. I have to recognize that it took us completely by surprise. Since then, a number of liquefaction projects have filed for permits to the Department of Energy and FERC. So far, the future looks optimistic as already 3 projects have received non-FTA approvals and are getting closer and closer to actual construction.
My apologies, looks like she's just dropped offline very quickly. She's usually back in about 8 seconds, so please bear with us. The only downside of our webinar. Silvia.
Well, as I was saying, between 10 years have been passed and Freeport, there were 2 years in between. But with the studies commissioned by the Department of Energy concluding that exporting LNG from the US will be beneficial to the economy and that there will be little impact on domestic prices, it is expected that permits will be awarded at a much faster rate. As you can see from this map, which is probably very familiar to most of you, there are plenty of projects in this queue. In addition to the improvements and innovation in drilling technology, price differential among regions will be a driving force for trade flows. At the moment, Henry Hub prices are very attractive compared to other benchmarks indexed to oil. This price advantage, together with the distance savings from using the Panama Canal route that reduces shipping costs, can provide a competitive edge to the US Gulf LNG exports. At the canal, we have a tendency to be rather conservative. Therefore, in spite of all the excitement that the US shale gas revolution has raised, it is important to place it into global context. It is well known that shale gas has been discovered in every continent. There are already liquefaction plants in North America, Europe, Africa, which are fully operational with capacity to export around 278 million tons per year. New exporting terminals are being built in North America, Africa, and Australia to add another 95 million tons per year to the LNG market. Right here in our region, Peru and Trinidad are the main exporting countries. At the same time, we see that demand for LNG seems to be growing strongly, mainly in industrial and electric power sectors. In Latin America, there has also been a surge in demand, and there are regasification plants already in operation in Chile, Argentina, and Brazil. Central America is at the moment studying the way to introduce this clean source of fuel into their energy matrix. We foresee that the bulk of LNG volumes that will move through the Panama Canal will come from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Oops. Mainly from the United States and Trinidad. These flows will depend on a number of factors that I have listed in a map that was supposed to be here, but it seems that it's not. But anyway, these flows will depend on these factors. And for instance, we expect that LNG from the Gulf of Mexico, for instance, that will end up in Asia, will be closely correlated to the export volumes permitted, the pace of development in projects in alternative origin sources, such as Australia, the Middle East, Africa, and the west coast of Canada, as well as the associated cost structure. Global and regional macroeconomic performance, as well as nuclear power policies after the Fukushima tragedy, will have an impact on the global demand for LNG and the volumes that we may see through the waterway. In general, the consensus is that the LNG exports will grow. In addition to the increase in industrial and power generation usage, environmental regulations such as MARPOL may trigger stronger LNG demand as it is perceived to be a suitable alternative fuel for vessels that can reduce emissions of greenhouse gases. In this graph, we built with projections provided by IHS-SERA, we can see that most of the new volumes are expected to come from North America and Australia, which is the orange part on the top. The world outlook is what we keep in mind when we prepare our long-term forecasts and we develop our toll strategy. As the LNG industry continues to evolve and becomes more flexible in terms of cargo allocation and the implementation of instruments such as swappings and spot sales. Oh wow, this is the map I was hoping to see. I have talked about this, so I will pass it. I will concentrate on the distance comparison that I have for you. With these instruments, and as the industry becoming more creative in terms of trading, we will see new markets that may open up for arbitration. And savings, for example, in the route of Peru to Spain will add up to 3,740 nautical miles compared to the Magellan Strait route. This is 8 days less of navigation using the waterway. The same thing is true for the route from Trinidad and Tobago to Quintero, which would save 6 days on each leg. And if we compare it to Mejillones, the saving is even greater, of about 9 days on each way. Between the Gulf of Mexico and Asia, the savings that we see is about 11 days on each leg. This is a total of 22 days on a round-trip voyage. When we look at these distance savings, the first obvious thing is that voyage cost is lower using the waterway. However, in terms of planning for long-term project, the use of the canal can also bring savings to capital investment. As the number of vessels needed for a year rotation is also reduced. This may be significant when we see that the price of an LNG carrier can range between $200 and $300 million each. Panama has already developed a number of logistic projects and facilities to take advantage of its privileged geographic position. The canal has acted as a magnet, attracting container port terminals, trans-Isthmian pipelines, and railroad bunkering activities, and it already has an international airport hub, the largest free trade zone in the Western Hemisphere, and a world-class banking system. The expansion of the canal will trigger the growth of these and many other activities in which LNG could play an important role, taking advantage of the distance savings the waterway offers and maybe of Panama's geographic position as an energy hub.
Let me see if I can push the slide forward.
I'm sorry, my slide is not moving forward.
It's okay. The presentation will be available afterwards as well for everybody. Just if you just keep going, and hopefully I'll see if I can push. I'll see if I can push it forward.
Okay, it's just that it's nice to match the picture with the with what I'm saying. Anyway, I was going to say that back in 1915, and then okay, this is the Ancon, the first ship that transited the canal back in 1915, and I was going to say that the construction of the canal changed trade routes around the world once it opened almost a century ago, and in the 1980s and 90s, the canal reinvented itself to accommodate these new kids in the block that were known in the maritime industry as the full container ships, adapting to the needs of the market segment that demanded reliability and timely service. And in 2015, in the 21st century, the canal is committed to support world trade growth and be ready for a total new ball game. So thank you very much, and I do apologize for the problems with the communication. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Sylvia. No, it was fantastic. Don't worry about the minor problems. You're always back in about 8 seconds, so that's fantastic. What I was just going to go over, thank you everybody for listening. I just want to quickly go over how to do the question and answers again, just as some people would have signed on after I went over this before. So what we have now is about we have about 25 minutes for questions with Sylvia. The presentation will be available afterwards. We are also recording this. However, obviously, it's best to stay online to get all of this. I see a number of people have put questions down already. So on the right-hand side of the page, you see a chat icon, a little speech bubble. Underneath that, there's a chat tab and a question tab. If you would like to put your question there, then I will be able to moderate the questions and put them onto the screen. So without further ado, it looks like we already have a few questions here, Sylvia. So if you don't mind, let's go straight to the Q&A session. I will just put the first question over on the screen. And while we do that, I just want to quickly do a bit of a plug for us to say that next week we're doing an event on energy reform in Mexico here in La Jolla, but it will also be webcast. We also have the Peru Energy Roundtable coming up, and probably the most interesting for everybody here, as Jeremy mentioned, the second annual Forum on Prospects for LNG and Natural Gas in Central America, which is happening on October 2nd in Costa Rica. And please also follow us on Twitter. I am tweeting a few things as we go along here. Here's the first question, Sylvia.
Okay, we don't have tolls prepared for LNG vessels in place. We have prepared proposals that we have presented at Intertanko meetings to get feedback from the industry. And I can say, since it's not an official rate, I cannot disclose it, but what I can say is that our intention is to charge vessels in terms of cubic meters capacity. We will have a rate for laden and ballast transits. And very generally, our intention is to enable the trade, making it very competitive to transit through the canal. And as I mentioned before, we are very well aware of the availability of LNG in many places of the planet. so that we would like to enable the trade from the region to the major users or the major importers such as Japan and the emerging user in China. And this will require us to have a competitive rate. So this is all I can say about pricing through the canal for this type of vessels.
Okay. I'm going to put this is a bit of a follow-up question. I don't know if you can answer this. It's more about the methodology for tariff rates in general.
Well, what we do in terms of preparing our tolls is that we have a very thorough analysis of the market. We look at the obvious comparison of competitive routes, such as the ones I showed, like the Panama Canal versus Magellan Strait, which is we have a very big advantage in terms of distance when we compare the route, for example, from the Gulf of Mexico to Asia or to Chile. But that is not all we see. We also see alternative sources, and we look at landed prices from the alternative sources that do not need to use the Panama Canal. So this gives us a very clear picture of what are the rates that we could really charge in terms of transit service.
And one more
I don't know if that answers the question. Or...
Hopefully, we just have one more follow-up question on tolls, and then I think we'll move on to a different topic.
Well, we have been having meetings with the industry, as I said, not only for LNG, but for every segment that uses the Panama Canal. And we are trying to get also feedback from our users so that we can see, we can bring to the table and to our analysis topics that we may have not thought of that may be relevant. So we expect that by sometime next year, early next year, we would have something announced, at least because we need to have a pricing, to implement a new price for all the post-Panamax vessels that we use the new logs before we open in 2015. So we expect to have something already approved by February or March next year.
So here's a question. I think the next question, I believe, refers to when you were discussing before about LNG terminals in Latin America, and you talked a little bit about, you mentioned Trinidad and Peru. I think this person is asking about Mexico.
We look at every possible route that may emerge. We foresee probably that there will not be so much LNG moving through the canal to Mexico because of the connectivity that it has in terms of pipelines and probably the availability of LNG on the Caribbean side, and maybe there will be some suppliers on the Pacific side that will not need to go to the Atlantic to provide LNG to Mexico. So I didn't mention, I didn't make a point of mentioning Mexico or maybe other countries that may be transiting LNG through the canal because of the volumes that we foresee. I showed mostly what we expect to see as the main volumes, but definitely, as I mentioned also, with all the creativity in trading that is going on in the market right now, there will be opportunities for arbitration and traffic because of price differentials.
Okay, the next question.
The timeline of the expansion. So far, we are about 60% complete in the overall project. We are expecting to be operational by May or June 2015, and it's well known that we have had some delays because of our difficulty to achieve the right specifications of concrete mix, because obviously we want our canal to last over 100 years like the one that we had originally. And this has caused some delays, but I think the delays have been overcome by now, and we are hopeful and optimistic that this new timeline by 2015 will be met.
Perfect. Here's a slightly more. This one will take you a little bit longer to answer. Renewable energies.
Well, we expect LNG to grow faster than the renewable energies. And one of the reasons that I mentioned is also the potential use of LNG as fuel for vessels. We think that even if LNG enters this market, maybe at 10% of the bunker market, that would be a huge increase in the use of LNG worldwide. We also expect to see the use of LNG increased in countries such as Japan because of the anti-nuclear policies that may continue to be implemented in the long term. So yes, we do expect to see the consumption of LNG in favor of renewable energies.
So I'm actually going to ask a bit of a question as the moderator and take my right and ask a quick question. So you talked a little bit about, Jeremy mentioned how the sort of connection between the expansion happening next year and also the LNG, the likelihood of LNG exports from the US with the shale revolution. I was wondering if you could just go into a little bit more detail about exactly how much or how likely you think the, particularly the non-FTA LNG exports is going to impact trade, at least in the short term, or if you see that more as a medium to long-term forecast, and you see the Asia, the other markets you talked about as being more important in the short term.
We don't foresee any LNG moving through the canal obviously before 2015, and until 2017 or 2018, the volumes we expect to see are very low. But once the terminals in the Gulf of Mexico begin operations, we expect to see a major growth in the movement of LNG, mainly to Asia. And what we foresee in the long term is probably about 30 to 40 million tons per year by 2030.
Okay, transiting in general or coming from this side?
Just for LNG, and mostly from the Atlantic to the Pacific, including Trinidad and perhaps some volumes from Colombia or northern Brazil. But as I said, but in the very long term. And we think that is a major growth for a market that today is zero for us.
Okay, interesting. Here's our next question. More technical question, I guess.
Well, now we're working on this, how our schedule will work. We are not sure yet of how exactly will be the process. We expect to have bookings, and the booking system today allows you to book even 2 days before transiting, and we even have an auction system in case that you are in a really big rush to transit and there is congestion. We are hoping that there will not be congestion, at least for the first years of operation, and we think that there will not be a need to book several months in advance. This is something today we have in the reservation system is vessels behave in different ways. So when we have, for example, passenger vessels and container ships, they can book a year in advance, sometimes even longer. But for tanker vessels and LPG and even chemical tankers, some of them don't even book, and some of them book a few weeks before the actual transit, so that they, depending on the way they operate, if they are a tramp or a liner service, we may have different behaviors in terms of the booking system. But what we will offer is probably something similar to what we have today.
Here's another one that's sort of related to that, I believe.
It is possible that we will have a nighttime restriction for LNG vessels, so that the first years they may only be allowed to transit during daylight.
Okay, I'm going to ask another question. Actually, I've just received one via email asking a follow-up on the US LNG export issue. You mentioned earlier that something like 87 or 88% of LNG vessels will fit through the new canal. What will that include? All of the LNG export development currently underway in the US, or do you what sort of percentage of the US vessels will come under that?
Well, it will depend on what size of vessels these projects are contracting. As far as I know, most of them are able to transit through the new canal. The size of vessels that will not fit through the new locks are the vessels known as Q-Flex, Q-Max, which are mainly Qatari vessels, and they probably exceed the dimensions of the locks by 1 or 2 meters.
My apologies. It looks Sylvia. So Sylvia's just dropped off. We had
Yes?
a really good. Oh, you are still there. Sorry, you just dropped out.
Yes, I guess I didn't answer your question.
Okay. I also just received another via email. I know this is we're really focusing on LNG here, but what's the ratio of sort of LNG to other bulk liquids that you expect through the new canal? What's the sort of
Well,
breakdown of liquids?
right now, liquid bulk is mostly petroleum and chemical tankers. That will be in total maybe 12% of the total traffic of that we see today through the canal. And then the LPG would be maybe 2% of total traffic. By 2020, 2025, we expect to see LNG taking a lot more participation in the canal traffic, probably between 12 and 15%.
Thank you. I just see a few more questions have appeared in the chat function here. I apologize, those people. I did not see your questions over here as well.
Possible onshoring movement that can alter the expected LNG routes described. What do you mean onshoring?
If that person could maybe write a follow-up question, we could come back to that if that person's still online. Let's go to the next question. If that person could write a little, just a clarification on what they mean by onshoring, that would be fantastic. Let's go to the next one in the meantime. Sorry about that. Huh. I don't know if this one's one you can answer.
Combined cycle or other generation projects under construction. Well, Panama has a lot of projects in terms of energy, electricity production, if that's what it means. Right now we have some aeolic parks that are being built in the interior of the country, and we are also trying to bring LNG to Panama to include it in our energy matrix. And this project should be ready as I'm not the authority in this in this matter, but I understand that by 2015 or 16 that we should have LNG in Panama. I would not really like to discuss this subject in much depth, because I am, as I said, I'm not an expert in local energy generation electricity generation.
I'm sure people can go and have a look at the local energy ministry to get any more details. How about this one?
Trading commodity including oil or natural gas, or would the new projects on discussion have some sense? Well, the Panama Canal will be able to double its capacity in terms of cargo. So as we see our forecasts, we will be able to handle these 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 additional cargoes in the future. The Panama Canal the expanded canal will not be able to receive VLCCs, for example, the very large crude carriers of 280,000 tons. But I don't know how relevant it will be to be able to receive this size of vessel, given that, yes, we have some major exporters of oil, such as Venezuela, but I'm not sure if the investment required to allow these large crude carriers uh, compared to the cost of being able to the investment necessary to allow them to transit the canal will actually pay off the the cost benefit of doing that is will have to be analyzed in detail.
Thank you. We have another question. Good, here we go. Someone's actually written let me go back to the onshoring. So the original question, let me put the original question up and then I'll put the clarification for onshoring. So the original question for everybody again was, do you think the possible onshoring movement can alter the expected LNG routes described in your presentation? And then let me just find, here we go. Here's the clarification. Onshoring, by onshoring, they mean the movement of manufacturing back from Asia to nearer locations to the main market, parts of the Caribbean, South America, even cheaper regions within the United States, also known as nearshoring. So
Well, if
I
we
don't.
are talking about, if we are referring to LNG imports and exports, I don't think that will have I don't think that will have a major impact in terms of how much LNG would be available for exports. I understand that the need for energy in the United States will increase because of the bringing back the industry into America, but the volumes that are forecast to be exported are rather low compared to the production that the United States will have in the long term. So I don't think that that will have a major impact on the volumes of LNG available for export
Okay, I think we
from the
have.
U.S.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. I think we have one concluding question. I'd like to sort of end on that, and if you'd like to take a couple of minutes answering this one, and then I think it's almost time. We're almost at 10 o'clock here, and then we've got a little video to play everybody at the end as you're logging off. But I think this is a nice question to end with.
Well, I guess the bigger winners of the Panama Canal expansion for LNG would be those projects that have contracts to export LNG to Asia from the United States. And perhaps in regional terms, I would say that all the imports from the Atlantic moving into Chile, for instance, will have a major benefit for shortening distances and perhaps optimizing their turnaround of the imports of LNG. In the same way, I would think that in the future, as Central America may move into developing LNG facilities to receive LNG, they will, at least those located on the Pacific side, will have an advantage for receiving LNG from closer sources on the Atlantic and in shorter time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sylvia. That was fantastic. Thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you so much, everybody, for persevering when occasionally the slides were a bit slow. And thank you, Sylvia, for answering all of these questions, some of which were, I would say, definitely beyond your regular ambit of work. So thank you for doing your best to respond to everybody's questions about Panama manufacturing and the canal expansion. So everybody else, thank you for being with us. Jeremy, if you have a couple of final words, and then I think we will all close with a video of the Panama Canal, just 1 minute update on what's happening as a final wrap up. But thank you again, Sylvia. It was really wonderful. Thank you for your time, and thank you everybody else for being here. Jeremy.
No, I just wanted to add my appreciation for Sylvia's presentation and the very interesting update on the canal expansion. And I think we'll probably have to have Sylvia back in a few months and get another update. But more importantly, hopefully once it seems that the tariff and tolling question is something that we'll all want to be paying attention to. So Sylvia, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone else for being online with us this morning. And thank you, Alexis, for moderating.
Not a problem. Thank you, everybody. Follow us on Twitter at IOA Energy, and I'll see you all next time.